Hello and welcome to another edition of Magic Mics. We begin as we do each week by introducing my two co-hosts, Aaron Campbell, Ruben Bressler. You guys are great. And we start as we do each week with the first pick. Now, there was a thing that happened to one of us this past week since the last show.
I went to Des Moines. I know, it's been all over social media.
Dude, they're like, I can't believe Ruben went to Iowa. And I'm like,
it was on the front page of the Magic Reddit for like 4 days.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
Ruben, oh my god. I am no longer with Star City Games. It happened, it's gone. There's no hard feelings or whatever here. It's a thing, it's a stuff, and it's now happened. So is what it is. Just letting you know that's a thing. No longer with SCG. And all that entails.
Right.
Another thing that did happen this past week was I play music in my spare time. Mm-hmm. And I like to sing songs and play my guitar and stuff. And someone wrote the lyrics to Brad Nelson the Musical, also known as Do You Want to Play with Abzan, where he is trying to convince Shaheen Sarani if he would just play with Abzan, everything would be better. And I recorded it, and lots of people liked it in orders of magnitude beyond anything else I've ever recorded.
You made me cry.
I brought the tears to Miss Campbell.
I was at work.
You're a talented man.
Yeah, it was 8 in the morning. I was checking my email, and I saw this thing on Reddit. I've actually never listened to you sing before. Like, usually when you tweet your songs, I have nothing against it. But
I see how it is. You're just like, yeah, whatever. It's probably awful.
No, it's just I've got better things to do. Nothing personal.
It's all right. It's just a list of things. You're down here. They're not on there.
But I clicked on it.
Old episodes of crappy television to watch. Like, I got things to do.
But I clicked on it, you know, and I'm on hormones, of course, so I was a little emotional, and I was weeping at my desk, and yeah, you made me cry on a Saturday at work, and
wow,
yeah, it was a good time. So thank you for making me feel something.
Well, I'm glad. I think.
Thank you for feelings. Feelings are good.
Feelings are good. You can hear more of my work at soundcloud.com/EvanErwin. But that was a cool thing. It was listened to almost something like 5,000 times now, and that's very, it makes me feel good.
I've heard you do a good. I have not listened to this yet. Interest of full disclosure.
Sure.
But I've listened to you perform lots of times before. And they've been great. So
yeah.
I hope that somebody continues. Like, whoever this was, like, I thought the lyrics were decent. Like, I hope they run with it and maybe make, like, if we're gonna go with like Brad Nelson the Musical, I think there's so many scenarios you could turn into songs. Like, I'm here for it. I think it'd be cool.
I'm ready.
You just turn bit of a fixer up into something.
Evan's like, I'm in.
I'm trying to think of other underloved Frozen songs to turn into things for Brad Nelson the Musical.
Yeah, there's all sorts of. I mean, you could even why stick with just Frozen? You could expand.
Sure. Yeah, just go the whole sort of like Disney stuff, whatever, whole new world, whatever. And I mean, it took me like maybe 5 or 6 tries, but I got there in terms of sort of the alliteration and the syllables and how they were kind of different from the original song. But it was fun. Nice. And I'm glad lots of people enjoyed it.
You played the guitar too, like that's you, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah. It's just like me and a microphone and my acoustic guitar, and I do the thing.
5,000 listeners.
You're like Magic's answer to Ben Folds.
Oh, you flatter me. This is great.
Evan is Magic's answer to a lot of people. He's a wide-ranging, talented man.
Thank you very much. All right, so moving on from the first pick, we're going to go into Gathering the Townsfolk, where a lot of people were talking about things this past week. I wanted to bring up 2 articles. One we'll focus on more than the other, but the first I did want to touch on briefly was Andrew Boswell. He wrote an article about Abzan Confluence and basically how Mana Confluence impacted his play for the entire time it was in Standard, how well he did with it and how well he did not do with it. He noted with Mana Confluence he won an Open Series, 4 additional Open Series top 8s, Grand Prix top 8, States win, additional States top 8, second place at the World Magic Cup qualifier, and without it he has 3 Open Series top 8s and a single GP top 8. So like there's things he's got to balance in there, but the real key to this deck, and it's linked in the show notes and you guys can find it on Star City Games, is that he kind of just puts like when your life is a resource, which is what that card does for you, how important it is, exactly how it works, and why it works the way it does. And that was a fantastic freaking article. But speaking of articles that were perhaps even that much more fantastic, Danny West wrote another article regarding his experience with cancer, called Power and Toughness, also on Star City Games. And, you know, Danny is just like a stone master. The guy is absolutely brilliant in terms of being able to write from the heart, being able to tell you sort of how he's feeling and how, you know, how he was kind of interacting with the world and all those things. And, you know, he does it in a beautiful way, and he puts like deck lists in there in just the right time. I mean, it's a really sort of sweet way. It's one of those things that makes you kind of really appreciate how good Danny is. Aaron, tell me how you feel sort of about Danny's article and sort of his struggle from, you know, having the cancer, you know, and sort of learning about it and up to now.
Well, I actually lost my mother to cancer last year, so I've been following this journey very closely, and I felt invested in this as well. And I feel bad almost saying that I enjoyed this article, because it's hard to say you enjoyed hearing about somebody fighting cancer, and it sounds like at times possibly even losing to cancer or thinking about giving up. Like he's talking about like the nitty gritty, like he wants it over with, and he does feel like he's reverted almost to a child at certain points. And walking you through this journey, and I really appreciated his honesty, and I also appreciated what this article brought out in other people. Like I said, we tried discussing this on my show, and before we knew it, we were all in tears, and even reading the comments, you know, seeing some really hardened commenters who, you know, I've seen some of these names before, and they won't hesitate to, you know, bust chops on other people's posts, but to see them sort of put all that down and say, you know what, this is really beautiful, I've been through some things too, it really did hit people where they live. And I think that we need articles like this to sort of keep ourselves in check. I know Abe Sargent's another one, when he was talking about his Huntington's disease and just being like, yeah, I've got this, and I'm going to die, and I'm very at peace with this. And it was like, whoa. And it really does put things in perspective, especially around this time of year where we do get wrapped up in, you know, formats and bannings and spoilers and blah, and just to sort of, you know, shift priorities. I think we need things like this in the community.
Ruben?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that he's a fabulous writer to begin with just makes the subject matter so much clearer. It's just a really powerful message delivered in a really beautiful way, and a heartbreaking way. I mean, the article it punches you in the chest. And Danny's a great dude. Danny's, you know, I always loved watching him when he was on the Versus series, doing the Commander decks, and he's just one of the most naturally dry, funny people. Like, he's got that Norm Macdonald kind of dry wit that I find myself being super attracted to whenever I can find it in other people. He's incredibly smart and talented, and the fact that he's able to sort of translate his pain into something positive is a really it's kind of unbelievable, because Magic is such a crucible of trial and error, and a lot of people get really negative about a lot of things. But when you face actual bad, when you face actual evil in your life, and you're able to spin it into something positive and share it with the world and help other people, it's something that's not only unique but really worth treasuring and talking about. And so I'm just very impressed with him, and I hope that he continues to gift us with beautiful writing, because he's just super talented. Also, let's drive some social media buzz here, because he does not have nearly enough social media followers. I'm looking at his Twitter right now. He's got 1,011 followers, which is a low number. So you should all go at Talaria_D West and go follow him.
Yeah.
Because he's a talented man. And also, while you're there, you can follow Kaolin Tiger, KaolinTiger, which is Andy Boswell. Both of them are worth following. Both of the articles were great. They're both great people.
Right.
And it was a good week for Magic articles.
Yeah. I do want to go back to the Andy Boswell article, because I'm somebody who fancies herself a bit of a black mage, and you know, it's always funny when I see people like the concepts that Andy was talking about are good concepts. Like, I'm not pooping on them or anything, but it is funny how people who prefer other colors will look at cards like Dark Confidant and be like, ew. And it's like, they're like, but or even newer players, you know, they'll look at a card like that and be like, but I'm gonna hurt myself, and you're just like, oh bless your heart. You know, they just don't quite understand
they just
things
they
like
don't
that.
Get it. Yeah.
Right, and he does say something really interesting that I want to highlight. He says 0 life is a symptom of losing the game, not the cause.
Yeah.
And this is an extremely important distinction to make when analyzing these cards. You didn't lose the game because you got 0 life. You lost the game because you either didn't do enough with the time that you had, or you simply didn't find those things to get you there. And just these little finer points. Like, I thought this article was really great, and things that I know to be sort of common sense, but you'd be surprised how many players still look at cards even when spoiler season comes out and they're like, you know, oh my god, I'm hurting myself, and it's like, not necessarily. Or don't be afraid of that.
People who think that have never played the cards Necropotence or Channel or Dark Confidant, as he points out in his article. And the most important quote from his article, from a Magic theory perspective, I think, is Mana Confluence lets you pay life for tempo.
Yeah.
And that's a huge deal. And usually you don't look at a land in terms of tempo. But at the cost of paying a life, it allows you to play your spells on time, which is a huge deal, especially in a deck like Abzan Aggro, which has been proven again and again to be one of, if not the most dominant deck for a year. So,
and it loses very little with rotation. Like, I think that's a deck that might survive and is scary. It's always been scary.
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, it's sort of a great article when you can pick apart like all these different little phrases. You can still say, like, if you are truly an aggro deck, your life total is generally irrelevant, and the damage from Mana Confluence is close to free. Yeah. You know, and I just love that 0 life is a symptom of losing a game, not the cause.
That's a great quote.
That's just such a fantastic. It's just something like you kind of like you write on your binder, or you just like sort of remember as this kind of thing. You kind of keep telling yourself, it's like, it's okay if I'm not at 0, then I can still win this game, and I can, you know, it doesn't matter what my life total was when I won the game. Yep. Absolutely fantastic. So we're going to barrel on into the red zone. And we had some controversy. We had Paulo Vitor's article on BFZ, on Battle for Zendikar. He does not like Battle for Zendikar. He notes that he thinks some of the mechanics are very sort of insular. They're only working with themselves. They only care about themselves. Otherwise, you have like this Stormcrow with all these abilities on it. Like, why are they colorless? Because things care about colorless, but not any other set is really going to care about colorless cards and colorless spells in the way that this does. And you have the brutal expulsion. Why is brutal expulsion rather colorless? Why? Well, because stuff cares about colorless cards in the set.
Yeah.
But you know, later on, no one's going to care that this card is colorless, and it's just going to kind of randomly hose people when they try to counter a red spell or counter a blue spell, and they're like, I gotcha, because that's colorless, because this one time there was this set that really cared about it. You know, I think he makes some good points. I think when he's talking about allies, and the fact that there are some cards that are allies or look like allies, but they're not, and then there's some that kind of feel like are they allies, but they are, and that seems kind of random, and I really think he kind of nailed Wizards on that one in terms of like, hey guys, you really shouldn't have made these kind of random. At least, you know, there's a few in there where you're just like, really, Kite Sail Scout isn't an ally, like, for real? Like, right. I don't understand that.
It is sort of hit and miss. Like, if you hid the text, if you hid the line where it says what the creature type is, about 30% of the creatures, you just couldn't figure it out.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to tell.
They aren't intuitive.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree as much in terms of he's talking about the colorless lands are great, and how you know, we might not be able to play with them because of the mana bases and whatever, and like that's fine, it's okay. I mean, like, you know, things are going to kind of ebb and flow that way, and there's going to be a set after Battle for Zendikar, and all the fetch lands are going to leave, and you're going to kind of have the ability to play with these. And I think some of that kind of comes and goes, but you know, I think he really got it right when it comes to like, why are allies allies, right. And like, why is there devoid? Well, because things care about colorless, and so that's pretty much it. So, you know, that's something, but I
liked this article. I was just gonna say that's not even the story.
But that's not the story. The story is that the article was published on September 21st, and suddenly the article's publication date was changed to September 16th. Now, the way that content management systems work, they will only show you the last X articles or the last sort of X dates of articles on the homepage, and suddenly when it's changed to the 16th, it's no longer on the homepage. So you have someone who is prominent in the community, a very sort of well-known, outspoken pro player who says, I don't really think this new set is good, and then all of a sudden that's taken down, and that's a thing, and all of a sudden we're talking about it, and this is what you describe as the Streisand effect, where if you didn't want people to read this or didn't want people to understand or know what he was sort of talking about, well, you kind of did the opposite. Now everyone wants to know, and everyone wants to read it, and why did they try to get rid of it, and oh my god, controversy. And so, Ruben, tell me about sort of like your feelings on this whole matter.
Right. I think that you hit the nail right on the head. That if their goal was to get people to not read it, boy did they miss. But if this was like really clever marketing,
whoa, next
then
level,
they just leveled us.
Wow,
and this is great. But I don't think that's what it is. This is a thing that I've noticed. You know, being both on the inside and on the outside for so long, and writing about Magic for going on 10 years at this point. There is what a lot of people refer to as a lack of negativity in writing. I mean, there's a lot of negativity on Twitter, and on social media, and in normal comic book store conversations about Magic. This sucks, that sucks, etc.
Sure.
But in articles are sort of insulated from that, and content is sort of insulated from that. Every article is like, this card's great, this card's great. Look at these 7 cards that are going to make standard decks immediately. And then there's not as many articles that are like, this is why this is horrible. Or bad, or could be better. There aren't as many of those, and so this is definitely filling a void a little bit with that. And you know, it's kind of a product of websites like Channel Fireball that, you know, depend on the secondary market a little bit in order to not piss off wizards, I think. And so I think that that's part of the reason why they did it. But again, I don't work on the inside, so I don't know. But yeah, I think that the backlash is hilarious to me. That it took them hiding it for everyone to be super interested in it. Not that people weren't interested in it before, but I just love it.
Sure. I mean, you know, you have sort of the contrast of like Travis Wu made the 8 reasons to be excited about Battle for Zendikar article, and then you have Paulo. It's just like, I don't like this set, and this is a problem. And I get that. I mean, even from someone who's made content for many years, you know, I understand how you don't want to just be the negative Nancy, like everything sucks and isn't this awful, and I can't believe this happened, and why did they do this to me? And you want to kind of focus on the good things in Magic and why things are positive, and it's really easy to kind of go down that negative route. That's another point. It's kind of low hanging fruit in terms of like things that you could write and get people upset about and whatever. But you know, when you try to just go like, well, if we could just not show that because we're not really happy with it, that's different. Aaron, how do you feel about this situation?
I oh girl. I think he's certainly entitled to his opinion.
Sure.
I think the only thing that concerns me is that he hasn't actually played with the set. Nobody has. I mean, well, the people at the Community Cup did, and I can certainly respect, you know, he certainly knows his stuff, and he's certainly been around for a long time, and that's great. But I think a lot of the criticism that he had for the set was very bold and very firm, and I do wonder how you can have those opinions if you've never opened the card, you've never opened a pack, you've never played the set. I think if this had come from somebody at the Community Cup, like if Maria and Megan had come back and been like, girl, the set sucks, and you know, because they played it, you know, they did a sealed version, they did a draft. It was my understanding they did other games in between. They've actually handled it. They've visibly seen how these cards work together. They've lived it, and I think it's one thing to say, you know, I have concerns or I don't feel good about this, but to flat out say this sucks, I don't like this, I hate this, this is dumb, none of us know that. And I think that if these statements were made after pre-release weekend, you know, like let's say you pre-released all weekend and you were like, whew, I played in 4 pre-releases and let me tell you something. Okay, cool. Maybe I think there's a little more.
You could say the same thing about, hey, I think that this Planeswalker is going to be great and going to be $75. Well, you haven't played the set yet, so I mean, everything that's trying to predict the future.
It's one thing to say I think something is poor, and another to say it is poor. Do you understand the
Sure.
distinction?
Yes.
Like I've seen several people. Sure. I've seen several people say I don't know about this set. It's another to say I know the set is crap. I don't like.
Yeah, and that is something that Paulo in particular is big on, is being very, you know, here's the thing. Paulo is a genius and is a Hall of Famer and knows so much about Magic that he's probably right 99% of the time at least. But, like every Magic player, he thinks he's right 100% of the time. So when he's wrong, he doesn't know it.
Yeah, so for me personally...
Which is a problem with every Magic player I've ever met.
So for me personally, if this had come out like after the pre-release weekend, if this had come out after like the first open and people were like, you know what, it's been, and I'm still not, I personally would give it a little more credence, but for now it just feels a little too soon, where I'm like, And I feel like I need
Sure.
more to say some of those things.
And that's why my favorite thing about it that I felt he had the best point on was the allies thing. It's like,
Oh, yeah,
even if you've
that's-
played with a set or not, it's like they kind of randomly assigned
Yeah.
allies, and that was seriously not a
Yeah,
good
I agree with
idea.
that.
So that to me is like, that was the best point that he made. He's just like, this is sort of random. Now, that's for like, the lands are not that playable, and I don't like Devoid. It's like, you can not like the idea of something, you can not like the idea that you might not be able to play with these lands, but I don't necessarily believe that. But regardless, like, those 2 points are kind of dubious for me, but I think he hit allies on the head, and that just is what it is. Yeah. But, like, again, I agree with Ruben. There's a lot that, like, I'm always right and always feel like I'm right, and I'm not always that way. So, it was just interesting that, we kind of got to see the Streisand effect in Magic happens time to time when things try to get sort of hidden or removed or deleted.
Right. But who got the last laugh? Who got the clicks? That's right.
Scoreboard.
Right. Channel Fireball got the clicks.
Scoreboard.
I also think it boils down to, I've talked about this in the past, sometimes things just aren't for you. There have been comments about, well, what good is Devoid? Well, to you, there are some competitive people who don't even look at the art. They just want to see, what the text says and what the card can do for them. And God bless them. We all have our moments. But, for the Vorthos people, the people who love the flavor, they are trying to sell you on the story. And so things like Devoid do affect that. And so, to say Devoid is not making the set better, well, maybe it's not for you. Maybe it's for another reason other than being competitive or skill or things like that. I think that, that often gets brushed under the rug too, that sometimes it's just not for you.
It is super interesting that Channel Fireball even published the article in the first place, because
I was thinking that too.
Because they're a company that their entire industry is selling Magic cards, and the most recent set of Magic cards is Battle for Zendikar. And here's an article saying that Battle for Zendikar is bad and you shouldn't buy it.
That reminds me of an article, and I'm not going to name names or anything, but there was an article that came across Star City's desk a month or two ago that caused a little bit of a kerfuffle. And I kind of thought the same thing, where it caused such a kerfuffle where I was like, who you let this publish? Like,
right.
Okay.
And you're sort of torn when you're a content manager on a big website like this, because you're like, I want to make money, but I also want to be a true journalist, right?
Right.
So, like, if you're working for the New York Times, are you going to write an article that says that paper is dead as a form? Like, is that a thing you're going to do? If you're a couch manufacturer, as one of the Reddit comments said, are you going to publish an article that espouses the dangers of sitting? Like, is that something you're interested in publishing? Like, it's kind of a weird line to try to toe. Where do you, which opinions do you want to put out there and endorse? And because all opinions are valid, but you don't have to put them all on your website. This one in particular, I thought was a super interesting article and was good for the Magic community. But in particular, probably wasn't good for Channel Fireball. So, it's like, yeah, whatever.
You have interests that, fight with one another when you try to make something happen in terms of, like, entertainment and, like, well, is this going to spur enough sort of community feedback and conversation that it's worth it to have something that may not be like 100% rah-rah, this is the best thing ever. And again, I think there is sort of a bias in terms of positivity, and not that there's always a bad thing regarding that. Like, it's not always, you don't necessarily want a community who's just like always focused on what sucks and like what's bad and how bad it makes me feel. But there was definitely some interesting behind the scenes action going on in this article that we don't always see. And I don't think I have it in show notes right here yet, but I did want to touch briefly on the WMCQ situation because I think we have a few minutes to talk about it.
Right.
There were a lot of differing experiences with the WMCQ, the World Magic Cup qualifiers that were held across this past weekend. Is that correct? Is when they were held. Yes. And as a result, I mean, you would see some things like people getting insanely low prize payouts, people having to pay more to get the promo, the Liliana of the Veil promo that you get just for playing in the WMCQ, which I think is absolute madness. I literally cannot believe that. Like, when they say this is your entry promo, and then you get to the event, or you try to register for the event, and they say, yeah, but you're going to need to pay extra for that promo. That is I'm calling a BS moment right there. And, I think Wizards should do some work in terms of trying to standardize things like a prize payout, things like, how an entry should work. And when you said this is an entry promo, there's been no GP ever, and I can say that ever because I know because I've paid attention to where they said you had to pay extra to get the GP promo.
Yeah.
The GP promo is when you play in the Grand Prix, you get the promo. When you play in the WMCQ, you get the promo. Don't muck it up. So, Aaron, how do you feel about sort of the WMCQs and the feedback that you've seen, on social media about them?
Yeah, I follow Willie Edel, who I love, big fan of Edel Genius, and he was basically saying that there's just no incentive to go to them. He specifically posted a tweet that said, 117 players in the USA at the WMCQ, more than half of the platinums who could be there and for, get a $500 fee didn't even bother showing up. He basically just said it was like a worse PTQ. There was no incentive to go. It just doesn't seem to have the same. I don't know if it doesn't have the same weight or people don't think it's something they should try for, but, it just doesn't have that same pull or that oomph that you would think. Like, I remember I went to a WMCQ and going, oh my God, I could possibly be on the World Magic team. And years later, if you were to say to me, hey girl, let's go to a WMCQ, I just don't have that same enthusiasm where it's like, woo, I can go to a 9-round and then, I don't know. It just doesn't have the same appeal to me. And it seems like even the pros couldn't be bothered to, get out of bed for the appearance fee and go. So that's saying something.
Yeah, this is kind of an awkward situation because, I remember the first year that they had this new format, the year after they did away with nationals, and I can still tell you who was on the United States' team that first year, the team that was captained by Kibler. It's not like Joe Panaccio has done much Magic-wise since being on the national team, but I know he was on that team, So it's like, but I couldn't tell you who was on the team last year or the year before, let alone people from other countries.
But they had that great GIF.
They
got bonfired out, and it was awesome.
That was the best GIF that's ever been created for Magic. Obviously, that was fantastic. And but what else has? I mean, that's it. That's all there is. That was good. It's like this is slightly better for mid-sized European countries. It's slightly better for countries that are about the size of Texas. You know what I mean? Like the Frances of the world benefit from this system. Sweden benefits from the system. Countries that are centrally located and have like 2 or 3 major cities that all of the pro players can get to, and that the gap between the best players and the mid-level players is so much wider than the United States. In the United States, a normal, I'm a halfway decent Magic player, but in order to play in all 3 WMCQs, I would have to drive to San Francisco, Dallas, and Philly, or fly to San Francisco, Dallas, and Philly for what amounts to a PTQ, which I'm not going to do. The excitement for these is way lower, and especially for big countries like the United States and Brazil in particular. The system just does not work. And I'll cite specifically Efro, Eric Froelich, the #1 ranked player in the world, has a tweet that was favorited 21 times, so it got a little bit of reach. Congrats to @TrumpetMan88 if you want to follow another national team, 2-time national team member. Neil Oliver. Great guy.
He's also a member of Team Ginge.
Team Ginger, that's right. He's on the red team.
Nice.
On a red. And he said, congrats to Neil Oliver. Great guy and player, super deserving. And please, please, please never have another WMCQ in the United States again. Thanks.
I mean, I can't believe they would give him $500 to show up. And he's like, you know what? I'm good.
I'd rather not. Yeah.
I'm good. I don't want your $500.
That's the world we live in now.
Willie also said that there were 1,100 players qualified for it in Germany, and 49 showed up.
Yeah, and Germany's the kind of country that would benefit from it. It's pretty centrally located.
Yeah.
Do you think this is something? So one of the European commentators, I can't say his name to save my life, but we'll call him
Big
M.
Z. Big Z.
No, Marine Liber.
Marine Liber.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
He's
said that
Hall of Fame nominated.
Hey, I'm not mad. I'm here for it. I just can't say his name.
He's a great guy. I've met him many times.
Sure. His response to Willie was basically saying that this is the TO's fault and that it's the TO's job to make this event appealing. Do you agree with that, or is it just doomed regardless? Like, could the TO have done anything to make these guys want to come out for it?
Probably not.
I mean, once you're on that upper echelon level, I mean, like they just don't care. Like they don't care about the promotions and the giveaways and whatever.
If $500 is not making you come out, then like.
But I
Right.
think the bottom line is that there were even people that weren't the pros weren't even coming out for this. Like you said, 1,100 people qualified and 49 showed up. That's a lot of people who couldn't be bothered to do this. So is that a TO fail when even people like me and Ruben couldn't be bothered to go?
Specifically for Germany, it might be more I don't know enough about the situation.
Sure.
It might be more TO. I mean, obviously it's a case-by-case basis, but for the United States in particular, it's just so far, and the TO just can't, like, what are you going to do? There's so many platinums that didn't even show up in the United States. Many of the platinums, a higher percentage of platinums live in the United States than in any other country, I would imagine. And so if a higher percentage of them just don't want to go, like, what are you going to do as a TO? You're not going to give them an extra playmat. Like, $500 isn't making them get out of bed. So, you know, there's nothing else to be done other than a fundamental change in the system. I don't know if they're trying to get the platinum level players to show up, though, is the other thing. I don't know what Wizards wants out of these. And so if they want the platinum level pros to show up and the gold level pros to show up and play in these, they're going to have to do something different, because what's happening now is not really working.
Well,
I was just going to say, on a positive note, Gabby Spartz did coverage at the Texas WMCQ. Nailed it!
Yeah, she was quite good.
So
Nice.
if anybody was watching that, Wizards, anybody, can we just hire her? Like, it would be
As
awesome.
someone who's done commentary for a lot of Magic tournaments in the past, she was a natural.
Yeah, so
Nice.
God bless Gabby.
Well, that's terrific. I mean, you know, I think, well, for me, I had no idea they were happening. I think that's part of it. I, honest to God, had no idea. I had no idea they were happening, where they were happening. Yes, they're assigned, you know, and like I kind of knew of them in terms of like I was aware that they were happening at some point, because at some point, you know, it was like, well, the WMCQs are happening on this weekend. And I'm like, okay. And then I didn't hear about it again for 3 months or whatever, or 6 months. And that was pretty much it. And so, you know, there's some in terms of like the promotions and getting people to show up that way, but there's also just really the advertising and trying to say like they're trying to sell this dream. At least this is the way I take it. They're trying to sell this dream of like, you can be a world champion, you can represent your country, and you can do this kind of Olympic-esque thing that only Olympians kind of get, that feeling of like national pride and being a representative of your country and like making everybody proud. And you're certainly doing that. It's just that when
I watch every year, I love it. I'm just like, yeah, crush the Russian team, Taipei. Like,
yeah.
I just like pick, like, yeah, I hope Puerto Rico wins this match against Guatemala. Just like, just at random.
But there is some, like, Wizards kind of has this habitual issue of not promoting the players. They always promote the cards. And so when you have the World Magic Cup come together, and, you know, you're supposed to, sorry, lost my train of thought here. When you have this kind of system, and you know you want to have like all these people who are very important, all these people who you know, all the people who you've heard from, and then you have this big event that has, you know, all these teams and whatever, and the teams aren't filled with all of the names that you've heard over and over again. That's kind of a problem, in my opinion. Like, the idea that you're spending all this time investing in these platinum pros, investing in these gold pros, and giving them all this money and spending all this money, you know, to sort of let them have Magic be, if not their job, a big chunk of their life. And then you're just like, well, but, you know, there's this big sort of PTQS thing, and, you know, we hope you run good, and we know you're a good Magic player, but, you know, even the best Magic players in the world aren't running hotter than like 70% win percentage, and that's like Brad in Standard, which is insane. You know, so you're still 30% of the time not going to win this at all, but here's your $500. Thanks for playing. You know, that to me is kind of an issue. I mean, that's where I think it kind of falls apart, and where this could be a huge star building exercise. This could be one of the best ways to get your top people in every country, the star, sort of let them shine the brightest, and let all these people who you've talked about at the Pro Tour and you've talked about at the Grand Prix, when you feature them over and over again, like, let them be the focus and let them get sort of all that joy that comes out of, and all that, you know, kind of sort of charisma that can spill across the screen when you have people who are, you know, the Killers and the LSVs of the world. When you have, you know, the Simon Gertsons, you have Matai Zadokai, you know, you have Marin Libera, you have, you know, like all these people who you continue to talk about. Like, you have the Yoel Larsons. Like, why aren't they the ones that are representing their country? Because they have done the most in terms of the pro system that you have created. Yet you want it kind of be like, well, the everyman should have the ability to do this, and that's just kind of where I don't feel it's doing all that it could as a result of that.
Well, there was also a discussion happening on Twitter, the discussion about coverage and how other sports handle it and how, Magic is sort of lacking in that area. And then came the discussion about how, promoting cards versus personalities and whether or not that's something that needs to change.
This is a discussion that I've been having with Evan and other people for years at this point.
Yeah, and I was having it even when I was doing the deck tease was, my whole point was to make you care about these people and make you root for them. And, I always find it fascinating when it comes around again, because like you guys have said, we've been sort of championing this for a while, where it's like, you need to give viewers people to care about. And, if you don't do that, it isn't going to take off.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you take a look at like, people know who like Kevin Jones is, and they know who Ross Merriam is. And like these guys who aren't Platinum Pros are getting more viewers than like, LSV versus Tom Martell or whatever on the other streams.
Because
and
Star City Games does a different thing. They go about character building in a different way.
Right. And so...
Well, I also think some of that, and this comes from doing the deck tease too, I also feel like and I don't mean this in any sort of shady light, but I think that when you have people who are they've already sort of reached that pinnacle, they're at the top, they do kind of close ranks a little bit, whereas you have the people who are up and coming, they do kind of let you in. And I do think it's a two-way street. I think if you do shine the spotlight on somebody, they have to give you something. The people that I always had on the deck tease, I tried to make sure I had interesting people. I tried to make sure I had people with personality, and some people sadly don't have that. But Star City does a good job, and these guys kind of know, hey, I'm up and coming. I've got to give you something to chew on. And I think it goes both ways. Star City does a really good job of picking those people that have something to say and are interesting. And I'm not saying other sites don't, but when you have somebody like LSV, he doesn't have to give you anything because he's already LSV. He can just he can say, I'm LSV, come watch me, and you do. Whereas someone like Kevin Jones is like, I've got to let you in a little bit, otherwise you're not going to watch me. And I think that's important too, learning how to market yourself and learning how to make yourself appealing and watchable.
Well, I mean, for me, it's when you kind of look at Pro Tour coverage and, like they spend time talking about like the combos, and they spend time talking about like, how this card or how these burn spells work or how this deck is kind of working, when you really should be talking about like how Yoel Larson is playing Brian Kibler and how awesome both of those players are and what they've been doing this year and, where they are in the World Championship. And
you see what
there's the USA versus the Swedish. I literally just pulled people, out of thin air, and I pulled those two guys, but regardless... Good job, buddy. It's just it's a difference in star building, and I understand from a Wizards perspective, like they get no money from building up Brian Kibler, but they get money from telling you that you should go buy Battle for Zendikar packs. Right. I get it. I understand it. I think the Expeditions are doing just fine in terms of selling packs, and so maybe they should focus a little bit less on the cards and more on the personalities.
Yeah, it's like a weird dichotomy though, because for example, a golf tournament, and we've talked about this analogy before, but I'm not sure I've mentioned it on Magic Mics before, which is for golf is advertising the players, because if you watch golf, you'll buy the stuff anyway. You don't need to tell them what brand of driver they're using, right? For Magic, it's a little bit different because the company that's running the tournament is also selling the product. So they're making money in a slightly different way. But golf and Magic are actually somewhat similar in their life cycles. Actually, Magic has as many players today as golf did in about 1940, 1950, back when the PGA Tour was a teaching tour, and people would go around the country and teach golf. And around that time, they switched from a teaching tour to a tournament spectator sport. Something similar has happened to mixed martial arts in the last 10 years. Esports, various types of esports are sort of bridging that gap now too, where they're not selling the characters or they're selling the characters more than they're selling the games or the sports. And Magic just sort of needs to decide where it is in that. And I think that we all agree that it's ready to sort of try to cross that bridge.
I think you can turn a corner there, and I'm also going to turn the corner because you gave me a great sort of segue into splash damage, where we got there. We totally did. You did a great job.
Wow.
Where DraftKings is this thing. DraftKings is like this weird force that, for me, because I just don't
Completely
pay
foreign
attention.
concept to
It
you.
just came out of left field. I'm a
Well,
dude who
that's
don't
the-
care about sports, so I'm like, I don't pay attention to any of this stuff. And like fantasy sports are the thing. And yeah, I did some fantasy leagues, and I didn't care about it, but it was fun to kind of, well, my dude ran some touchdowns, and that's great. And then all of a sudden, it's like, we're making millionaires, and I'm like, whoa, and there's just advertising everywhere. And then this past week, DraftKings like are now sponsoring Solo Mid, and I'm like, well, what, really? And so this thing is just blowing up. And Ruben, I think you have a really unique perspective on where this is all going.
So to clarify what Solo Mid is, Solo Mid is a gaming team. They've sort of got their fingers in a lot of pies, but they're most known for League of Legends. They've got a couple players that do. They've got a Hearthstone team. I think that they have a CS:GO, a Counter-Strike team also. But then there's lots of companies that are like Solo Mid that are getting sponsorships from various different companies. DraftKings in particular is a daily fantasy sports, or DFS, platform where basically every day you can make a different fantasy team. If you did fantasy sports in high school or in college or whatever, you remember that you would draft a team, and you can still do it these days. Like lots of people do Major League Baseball fantasy drafts and whatever, where you have a team and you have that team for the whole season, and then at the end of the season, somebody wins based on points given out for some reason.
Wait. So that's not how these work? I swear to God,
This is similar.
I'm just completely unknown.
It's not a season. It's daily. You draft a different team every day based on how many points certain players are worth. So you go, oh, I think that Aaron Rodgers, the quarterback of the Green Bay Packers, is worth a little bit too much for how much they're charging me. So instead, I'm going to take a slightly worse player for slightly less points and put them on my team. You have a certain point allotment. Different websites work in different ways. The point is, it's super popular, and it's already like $1 billion industry. And it's expected to just keep growing. I think that the number is that they're expecting it to add another $500 million to the industry by 2017. If you have turned on a television in the last 4 months, you've seen a DraftKings ad. Right. DraftKings, a non-poker website, was the #1 sponsor of the World Series of Poker this last summer. This is the cover of September's issue of ESPN magazine. This is just a big DraftKings ad. Can everybody see this? Is this?
Yeah, that's in frame.
That's absurd. This is the cover, right? So it's enormous, and the fact that they're moving into things like League of Legends and Counter-Strike and games like and Hearthstone specifically, which would be much more interesting for Magic players, is incredible. By the same, I'm sort of getting more involved in daily fantasy sports. I'm not playing them myself because I just don't feel like I have the time or the energy to get good enough at it to make it like worth my money and my time. But I have a lot of friends who play poker for a living, but they also do daily fantasy sports because the skills kind of cross over in terms of numbers crunching and value and figuring out what percentages are going to win. It's another predictable kind of system game that poker players are generally better at, and Magic players are generally better at also. Daily fantasy sports is in a really weird spot. It feels a lot like the online poker boom. You remember online poker when it was legal in the United States?
Oh, yeah. It was huge.
And there were just advertisements everywhere, and full tilt ads were on train stations, and Ultimate Bet was everywhere, and all those. And then suddenly, the United States government was like, no. And then all the online poker players moved to Canada, basically, in the United States. This feels a lot like that. And so, maybe in 3 years it'll get some attention from the Senate or something like that. But for now, it is just insanely popular.
It's hog wild, man. It's kind of insane.
It's kind of unbelievable. And the fact that they're moving into esports, and more specifically, this is the coolest part, is you can now bet on esports on DraftKings. You can bet on who you think will win a League of Legends tournament on DraftKings. This has sort of been around in Magic a little bit.
Yeah,
like you can be like, hey, Reed Duke is 8-1 to make the top 8 of this Pro Tour. When Big Z was on his tear of making top 16s, he was like 6-1 to make the top 16 of the next Pro Tour or whatever. And that's cool, but it's not DraftKings. This is a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, this seems like it can kind of move into that direction. Aaron, how do you feel about the ability, like A, what DraftKings has been doing, and B, sort of how these sponsorships are kind of starting to go into esports, and maybe one day we'll see them kind of go into Magic if that's ever a possibility.
I caught two things of what he said. I caught Rebuke and Fantasy.
There we go.
What's
Nice.
the rest? Just
Well, there was some criticism that I throw to. I know, and there was some criticism that I throw to Ruben too often, and this is why I threw it to Ruben this time, because I knew that Ruben had a lot to say on the subject, so I didn't want to leave you out or act like I left you out. But there was Reduke and Fantasy in there, so high five.
Now I'm distracted.
Oh, well, now all I'm saying is I really enjoy the fact that DraftKings has kind of made this type of impact. I want it to keep moving forward. I mean, so to Ruben, and again, honestly, until you explained that it's a daily thing, I still thought it was like this weird, like season long, the person who did the best that week, got a big prize. That's awesome. But you still had all your same people, and you had to do like trades type thing. I remember that was a big point, when you have the season long stuff. So let's kind of wrap this in a Magic show. Could you say basically that you could have, maybe not daily because there's not enough Magic, but maybe a weekly kind of like, here's the people who would do well at the Open Series, or here's people who do well at Grand Prix,
so
and then
here's how they're going to do it for League of Legends. There's so many League of Legends tournaments that they're basically going to do it weekly, and you can do it for Hearthstone too, just because there's so many tournaments.
Sure.
And you can say, all right, I have 10 points to spend. Mm-hmm. This team is 3 points. This team is 4 points. This team is 1 point. This team is 2 points. This team is 2 points. The rest of the teams are half a point, right? And you have like some number of points to fill out your team. And if you randomly fill out your team, not randomly, but if you correctly fill out your team with the best overall, then you win the bet. And you can do that weekly. Mm-hmm. And that's how it would work with fantasy sports, or how it would work with the Pro Tours. I imagine it would be a Pro Tour thing, as opposed to it might be it might be doable with Grand Prix, but basically what it would be is like you have 1,000 points, and in order to purchase Reed Duke for your fantasy team,
there you go. All right, Aaron,
that would cost you 400 points.
Okay,
so you have only 600 points left for your remaining, let's say 5 people that you want to put on your fantasy team. And Brad Nelson is some number of hundreds of points, and Ruben Bressler is 25 points, and Aaron is 25 points, and Evan is like negative 60 points. You just put them on your team.
You get a credit. You get a credit. They're like
more credits. You can buy more Reed.
A little sad face.
It's like a tax write-off.
But basically, that you would build your team based on how many. It'd be like an auction draft if you've ever done that with a cube. I don't know if you guys have ever done an auction draft with a cube before, but basically you have an allotted number of points to build your team. Mm-hmm. That could work for Magic. The problem is that Magic is not as juicy to watch on television, right? So these esports that are super exciting to watch and have these huge built-in fan bases are now combining forces with this other thing that's reaching a pinnacle of popularity, DraftKings. And they're just gonna, it's like when two waves crash into each other near a shoreline and they're both gonna explode towards you. It's gonna be enormous. And so this is gonna just add to, this is gonna rise both ships. This is gonna help both parties.
Yeah.
And it's gonna, if you're sick of daily fantasy sports commercials from FanDuel and DraftKings already, boy, let me tell you what, you are not going to be able to avoid them for the foreseeable future.
Sure.
Until a senator gets a.
I mean, it could be shut down again. To me, like, just again, as a guy who doesn't pay attention to any of this stuff at all, and who once did some fantasy leagues years ago, it seems like it's all DraftKings all the time. Their name is everywhere. The advertising is everywhere. People are winning like $1 million a week or something, and there's like these stories of this guy who got the team perfect, and so now he got $1 million. He's quit his job. He's living the dream. Everything is different.
But that's the only story you hear.
Of course. Well, I mean, it's just like casinos, right? The person who win is on the billboard and it's just like, look at me, I win at everything. And the guy who just got creamed is just like slinking out quietly and doesn't say anything.
He's not on the commercial.
Absolutely not. And so that's a thing that could happen for Magic. I understand that, like, ultimately it's tough because we are not as excited. Like, Magic is not as exciting.
Magic is inherently less exciting. There's too much shuffling. There's too much downtime.
Right.
It's too much like chess, even though it's the best game ever when you're playing it.
Right.
It is, unless you know exactly what you're watching. It's kind of boring to watch. It's like golf. Like I said, golf is kind of awful to watch. So there's pluses and minuses, strikes and gutters with the idea of daily fantasy sports letting you bet on Magic. It is a possibility. I wouldn't doubt it. The crossover between poker, Magic, and daily fantasy sports is such that maybe it'll happen sometime in the near future.
Maybe. I mean, it sounds like a thing that could happen that maybe they're not focused on it now because they're just kind of branching out into esports. But like once they kind of saturate that market, I think it's something you can say like, well, this is the next tier down.
Right. And if you can bet on it, if people are willing to bet on it, they'll do it.
Sure.
Like if it doesn't matter if it's boring to watch for a normal non-fan. If they're going to make money doing it, there's nothing stopping them.
There you go. So we're going to move our way into the finisher. We're going to talk about the fact that the results are in on Blogatog, Mark Rosewater's personal Magic Tumblr page, which is amazing, by the way. And he keeps it up all this time, answers so many questions. It's absolutely unreal. He noted the top 5 worlds that Magic players would like to see MTG return to were posted. And the top 5 were Innistrad, Lorwyn, Dominaria, Kamigawa.
Yeah, there you go.
And new Phyrexia. Did I mention Kamigawa? Because Kamigawa.
You're a big... I love the world. I hate the set. I love the world.
No, I mean, like, Saviors was one of the worst sets of all time, no doubt about it. But, like, the world was fantastic. The lore, the artistry, the paintings that came out, the card images back then were absolutely unreal, which is great. So, other than those, which worlds would you like to see Magic return to? Ruben, you want to kick us off here?
Sure. Well, I would personally be... As a huge nerd, I would personally like to see Magic return to Ulgothra, which is from the Homelands expansion, because I really feel like we could use some more good old-fashioned, way too expensive, mediocre commons.
Oh, man, we need some more of those, right?
Yeah. More 8-mana 7/6s, please.
Hey, Grandma Sengir is the bomb.
Right.
Because everything else is
Yes, in a world of crap, the shiny crap is the best crap.
Yes.
Aaron, what do you think about this one?
Okay, Ruben, I'm coming for you. I'm going to tap you here. Okay.
Here we go.
In 2 years, get ready, everybody, we are going back to Spice World. The only issue is we have to figure out what Spice Girl goes with what color in the color pie. So I'm thinking... Okay, so I'm thinking...
Scary Spice is black.
Of course.
Yeah.
Ginger's red.
Nice. Baby Spice?
Baby's white, probably.
Baby's white.
Okay.
Yeah, Spolty. I'm thinking she's more green because
I don't even know what's left.
Posh is blue. Yeah, because she's got that.
Posh should be blue.
Stern,
because
Stern Mentor was a card. It's like that stern.
This conversation took a turn.
It got a little weird that we're all very invested in who's what. In Spice
but they
Girls.
were all pretty. It was pretty simple to figure out, though. Like it wasn't like we assigned. Like if you were trying to assign color pies to NSYNC, we'd be here a while. Like,
nice. Yeah. Well, it's got to be May. I would like.
Evan.
Hey, I did it. I would like to see Magic return to the world of Warcraft, or rather, I would have liked that had Hearthstone not already done it.
Yeah. See, there you go. We did it. We already did that one. We already returned to the world.
Oh, there we were. If it's just Hearthstone, there you go. The problem is solved. And so that ends another episode of Magic Mics. Thank you guys for joining us here live to discuss all things Magic. I want to thank my co-hosts, Aaron Campbell, Ruben Bressler, you guys for watching. We're going to move into our final slide here. We hope you guys, we hope that you like, follow, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe, do everything social that tells people that we exist. You can catch us online at twitch.tv/magicmics, on Twitter at magicmicscast, on Reddit at reddit.com/r/magicmics, and on Facebook at facebook.com/magicmics. Talk to us privately at magicmicspodcast@gmail.com. Follow the audio-only podcast at magicmicspodcast.libsyn.com, or find us on iTunes, or join us here next week. Same time, same place, for another episode of Magic Mics. Good night, everybody.